Hi everyone. We have a supplemental video for today to talk about something that music majors will become quite familiar with, minors as well to a lesser extent, which is the concept of what we call SATB voice leading. So, we've talked about voice leading briefly in class already, but this video is going to go into a little bit more details into this specific kind of voice leading. So, here's some review. What is voice leading? Well, as we've seen in class, we can think of the motion between chord tones as single melodies moving in conjunction with the harmony. If we imagine these chord tones as voices in a choir, we can imagine a chord progression as the intersection of harmony and smooth melodic writing. So, this phenomenon of thinking of melodies as interacting consonantly is also called counterpoint. So, note against note, counterpoint. Thinking of like how horizontal passages are interacting with each other at any given time. So, music majors often write out chord progressions with smooth counterpoint and voice leading in mind, a process that musically dates back for centuries. The concept of voice leading and counterpoint predates our understanding of chords. So, we're going to be looking at chords and harmony a little bit today. It's really about how we use smooth voice leading and solid counterpoint to create a harmonic sense in a piece of music. So, just like our discussions of figured bass, voice leading and contrapuntal practices predate our understanding of chords and triads, as I just said. So, SATB voice leading. When someone describes SATB voice leading, they're describing a four-part setting of harmony with smooth counterpoint. This specific practice is often associated with choral music. It's named for choral music, and students of theory often study the chorales of J.S. Bach, for instance, as an exemplar in this style. The notion of Bach chorales are kind of this exemplary area where SATB voice leading come into play. SATB refers to soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, which are voice types, written from top to bottom. So SATB, soprano, alto, tenor, bass. Soprano is the highest voice, alto is the upper middle, tenor is the lower middle, bass is the lowest. Usually soprano and alto are sung by women, and tenor and bass are sung by men. But you can find four-part settings that even have those ranges in a variety of different contexts and ensembles. This practice of writing out a chord progression in this manner unites the vertical components of music, so harmony and intervals, vertical components in a single slice of time, with the horizontal components of music, so melody and rhythm. Something that is valorized in SATB voice leading is what's called line independence. So each line has its own kind of coherence and shape to it that stands on its own, that when everything comes together creates a piece of music. So here's what this looks like. There are myriad contrapuntal rules that are often taught, and such rules could fill years of study in entire classes. In our department, for instance, we have counterpoint classes, whole classes around this. So for our purposes, let's just look at writing out three chords with smooth voice leading. So we have our soprano, alto, tenor, bass. The tenor is read an octave lower for the sake of ease. Notice the little 8 down there. We've got E flat major, 4/4 time signature. We've got three chords here, a 1-5-1. So we want each part to be smooth and distinct while also fleshing out our chords. So for instance, notice that the bass has a nice, easy stepwise melody. The tenor holds a pitch steady. Alto's also stepwise. Soprano's also stepwise. It doesn't always have to be stepwise, but in general, you want most of your voices to be moving in an easily sung and kind of conjunct manner. And if there's going to be any sort of large leaps, you want it either to be in the bass to kind of clarify certain chordal things, or in the upper voice in the soprano to make the melody more interesting. So, in addition, we don't want voices to be too far apart, and we want a variety of different types of motion. We'll talk about motion in a second. We're going to come back to that. But for instance, what I mean is, notice that between this and this, if this is an octave down, we've got an octave between tenor and bass. Bass can kind of do its own thing. Bass is a little special, but we've got basically notes within an octave, notes within an octave, notes within an octave. We generally don't want to spread our voices too far because it keeps them all on the same register and it keeps the sound rich and keeps the sound full. So notice that our final chord here, we've got a fifth, we've got a sixth, we've got an octave. So let's go ahead and listen to each part one by one so we can kind of illustrate what I mean about each part being kind of smooth and distinct, and then we'll put them all together to hear what that sounds like. So here's the soprano part. It's a simple melody. If this were solfege, if you were in a chorus, you would perhaps say do, re, mi on this. It's scale degrees 1, 2, 3. The alto part starts on a different chord tone, starts on chord tone 3, goes up to chord tone 4, and then back down to chord tone 3. The tenor part holds this fifth steady, so it's the fifth in E flat or the root if we're in B flat. And then E flat, of course, goes 1, 7, 1, which creates the impression of a 5, 6, 5. It's a B flat dominant 7th chord with inverse inversion. This is not the most exciting melody for each of these, but it's clear and coherent. There's not extreme jumps around. They're all easily sung. They're all easily digested. And when they come together, they form this simple chord progression. That's the basics. So students will often do this process from the bottom up. We're not going to do a ton of writing. We're just kind of getting more conceptual with this. But, you know, if you know that you have a 1 chord, you start it with a 1. You can maybe space out a 5th, then get your 3rd, then double your octave, and so on. There's all sorts of rules that determine certain processes that we're not going to get into. But it's a relatively straightforward process conceptually with just tons and tons and tons of opportunity for kind of investigation. So let's talk about types of motion for a moment. So a concept that accompanies voice leading is that of motion. In music, motion describes how notes are changing in relation to one another. So there are 4 types of motion that we see in music. Parallel motion. Notes move in the same direction at the same interval. So to show clarity of voice leading, we often put stems in different directions if notes are sharing a staff. So you can think of these as being 2 different voices. The soprano voice and the alto voice. Notice that we move up, we start in a 3rd, and then ascend also at a 3rd. Parallel motion. They are moving at the same interval. They start at a 3rd, they both ascend by 2nd, they still are at a 3rd. Similar motion is when notes move in the same direction, but at similar intervals. They're not the same interval. So for instance, we start here and then we get bigger, but the alto only goes up a step, and the soprano voice goes up a leap. So we still have this effect of both are rising in the same direction, but the effect is a bit different. It's not quite the same as a parallel passage. Oblique motion is when one note holds a pitch and the other note changes. So in the last part, in the last chord that we looked at, the tenor, for instance, how it stays the same, everything is oblique compared to the tenor. Here, the alto stays the same while the soprano voice changes. And then finally, contrary motion, which is when both notes move in opposite direction from one another. This could be away or towards. It doesn't really matter. They both start in a 3rd, and then they both, one descends and one ascends to give us a 5th. So, contrary motion. There's no one better or worse type of motion. A good piece with good voice leading is going to have a variety of different types of motion throughout, both between voices on a single staff, but also throughout the piece overall. If a piece was nothing but oblique motion, it wouldn't be that interesting. Same way with contrary motion. So having a variety is usually a desirable quality of this. So let's talk about something called tendency tones. We've talked about this a little bit in the periphery for this class, but since scales and chords have hierarchy, so 1 is obviously more important, 5 is one important, and so on as we've looked at, different notes serve different purposes. So we've seen this already, as the tonic is the most important note in the scale, and certain progressions are more likely than others. So for instance, we talked about 5-1 being important. The 2 most prominent tendency tones in our scales are 4 and 7. Now what I mean by tendency tones is these notes want to go to other notes. It's a kind of a conditioned desire they have. And what I mean is that scale degree 4 typically descends by half step. It's scale degree 4 to scale degree 3. There's a half step between those two, so they usually want to fall. And scale degree 7, which is the scale degree at the top, and there's a half step at the top, it wants to ascend. So think about where our half steps are in a major scale. Basically, they want to rest in our major triad kind of areas, 1, 3, 5, and 1. So tendency tones are on prominent display in a 5, 7, and 1 progression. So here's 5, 7, to 1. We've got G jumps up to C, D descends down to C. We've got octaves here. We have E and we have G. We omitted the G in this. That's fine. So we've just got C, C, E, and C. That's totally fine. Notice here, scale degree 4 is F. Well, scale degree 4 in the key of C, that is, not relative to 5 in the key of C. Scale degree 4 wants to descend to scale degree 3. Scale degree 7 wants to ascend to scale degree 1. Oftentimes in music theory, we'll use what's called solfege to talk about this. So do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, which are assigning syllables to different chord tones. So we would think of this as being fa, mi, and ti, do. So these want to happen. If this doesn't happen, if you have this chord and it doesn't resolve like this, it's usually going to create a sense of disjunctness, and it's not going to be as satisfying because we've been conditioned in Western musical systems to expect this type of tendency, which is why I bring it up. So let's go ahead and end with an example of voice leading in context. So here is a piece written in SATB style by the composer Anton Bruckner. Note that while there's a clear sense of harmony, and I've given you the Roman numerals here, there's a clear sense of harmony while also having smooth melodies for each voice. So we've got a clear melody, we've got soprano diverges a little bit, everybody's playing in, for the most part, the same rhythms. It's kind of a homorhythmic texture. And we've got chords underneath that we can identify. So if you need to refresh your memory on the Roman numerals, go ahead and check out the last supplemental video about that. We've got 1, 6, 4, 5, 1, 2, 5, and then so on. We'll talk about this chord in a future class, so don't worry. This is kind of a special case, the 5, 6, 5 over 5. This isn't an inversion. This is something else, so we'll talk about that later. So barring the circled note, every single pitch is part of a logical chord progression. So while we have this clarity of linear lines, of melodies, with our alto, for instance, has a smooth melody, our tenor has a smooth melody, our bass has a smooth melody, and so on, every single pitch barring this one is part of a logical progression. So it makes sense both horizontally and vertically. And this pitch is what we would just call a passing tone. It's just a little embellishment to get us from one place to another. So it's not like it's incorrect or anything. So something I also want to note, a way to keep voice leading smooth is if notes are common to both chords, you keep them the same. So for instance, 1 and 6, well, F is held the same. So the only times that notes are going to change are usually when we need new chord tones. So if a voice can hold its same pitch, it's usually going to. That helps give continuity. For instance, we have everybody move in unison here. So the bass moves contrary to everybody else, moves contrary to soprano, and these two lines hold obliquely against soprano and bass. Let's think about our different types of motion. We've got some contrary motion here. We've got some contrary motion between this and between, or rather this is oblique motion between the soprano and the other parts. You could look at motion in an extremely fine-tooth comb if you'd like. You could literally compare every single line to every other line for the entire piece, which isn't always the most productive thing to do. But for our purposes, it can be kind of fun to spot the motion as you look for it. So let's go ahead and listen to this piece. It follows a logical chord progression, has 4 independent lines, all working on their own, but coming together to create a clear sense of direction and harmony. One more thing. In pieces like this, melody and harmony are inseparable. The voice leading is equally as important as the harmony in pieces like this. You cannot just disconnect it. You can't just change the chord because it would completely disrupt the counterpoint here, the voice leading. So there's a certain point where chords and melody kind of intersect in a way that is hard to remove them from. So just something to kind of note. It's an interesting phenomenon we see in pieces like this and pieces of a certain historical timeline. So let's go ahead and listen to this. and we end it on a half cadence if you're remembering your cadences. So yeah, that's a real quick nuts and bolts summary of voice leading, of SATB voice leading, of some motion, tendency tones, some of the rules. You'll get so many more rules if you ever take a class on it, or if you continue on into a music major or minors class. So there's lots and lots we could do with that, but that's just kind of a broad sense of the concepts of voice leading in a piece of music.